There's the oil filter right there. That's very convenient, easy to get to. Oh my God. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So this is my daughter's 2019 Honda Fit LX. It's the second Honda Fit that she's owned. We bought her a used Honda Fit several years ago, and she absolutely loved it. We loved it. It's a really nice car. Unfortunately, about a year ago, she was driving back to school, and it was rainy, and a couple of cars lost control and ended up spinning out, and her car got hit. Now, I didn't think the damage was all that bad, but the insurance company totaled it out. So we went shopping for a new used Honda Fit. I started checking around, looking at prices, and just kind of on a whim, I went and looked at the dealership to see what new Fits were selling for. Well, I got lucky. It was like the end of the model year. They were running some pretty steep discounts, and it turned out I could buy a 2 to 3 year old Honda Fit at a pretty decent price. But because of the deal that was on, I was able to buy a brand new Honda Fit for only about $3,000 more. Well, I'm not a new car buyer. I haven't purchased a new car for over 20 years. But in this case, it was too good of a deal to pass up. An upgrade from her old one, nicer package. I think her old one was the base model. This is the LX, which is a step or two above that. Really nice car. If you're in the market for a small car, economical, well-made, well-equipped, check out the Honda Fit. We really, really like them. In fact, for our next car that my wife and I get for our own personal driving, there's a good chance it's going to be a Honda Fit also. Yeah. Changing your own oil is a fairly simple, do-it-yourself job. Pretty much anybody can do it with an investment in some simple tools. Now, the first thing is you need to pick the car up off the ground to get at the bottom to get it an oil drain plug. And so to do that, you can do it a couple ways. I've got the really nice hydraulic lift system. It's great, but you know, we're talking $2,500. Most of you are just going to use a floor jack to pick the car up. That's great. Make sure though that if you're going to use a floor jack, that you invest in a couple of jack stands. These adjust up and down. You get them up underneath the thing, underneath the car on the jack points, and then you lower it back down, and it sits on a couple of these. They lock, and they're nice and safe and stable. Do not work under a car if all you've got is the floor jack. It is dangerous, and if you simply can't, somehow, if you can't afford a couple of jack stands, don't change your oil. You do not want to get up under there. In fact, it was a year or so ago, there was a fella not too far from here that he was working under his car. All he had was a single jack. It slipped. The car, well, it crushed him. He was crushed between the car's transmission and the floor, and he died. So don't make your spouse or your children or your neighbor, don't make them find you like that. Be safe. Okay, so you're going to need some oil. Obviously, if you're going to take oil out, you better put oil back in. Now, this is the correct oil for this car. It's a 0W20, which has to do with how thick the oil is. I generally go with full synthetic oils when we're talking about something that you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on. Saving a few bucks every year by buying cheap oil just doesn't make any sense. Go ahead, get the full synthetic oil, bite the bullet, and take care of your car. Now, of course, if we're going to change the oil, we need to change the oil filter at the same time. Again, your local auto parts store is going to have the right filter. Just if you don't want to go in and figure out which is the correct one, just go tell them what car you got. They will be happy to look it up for you. Taking the oil filter off, you're probably going to need a wrench. Now, there are a whole bevy of different kind of oil wrenches. This is my current favorite. It's has three arms connected by gears, and when you turn it, it adjusts to whatever size oil filter you've got, and it clamps down, digs into the oil filter, and turns it off. A lot of oil filters, they can be kind of a bear to get off especially if they're up in a tight area. This, however, will adjust to the size that you've got, clamp on, and gets the oil, in my experience, gets the oil filter off really easy. And they're cheap. They're like maybe $15. I'll give you a link to this one down in the description below. Draining the oil out of the car, you got to put the oil somewhere. I like this oil catch pan. It's basically a plastic tub with a hole in the top here. So you put this under there, you drain the oil into it, and then when you're done, you can take and remove the spout, or remove the lid on the spout, and pour it into some kind of a container to get rid of it. Now, most of the time I have one or two of these type of jugs sitting around, and I'll just pour it right back into there. Or if I don't have that, a couple of gallon milk jugs will work also. Just take it to your local auto parts store. Most, if not all, auto parts stores will accept used motor oil, and they'll dispose of it properly. You don't have to worry about it. Now, this is just the head of the oil filter wrench. To use a technical term, it's the grabby part. It uses a standard 3/8 inch socket, and so I can either use like a breaker bar, or more typically, I'll use a ratchet, and I'll put an extension on it if I'm having trouble reaching up to find the oil filter, or reaching up to grab hold of the oil filter. You're also going to need a funnel, because if you take all the oil out, you're going to need to put oil back in, and sitting there trying to pour it into the little tiny opening on the top of the engine, that usually is a recipe for a nice big mess. So grab yourself a nice oil filter. I like these that are kind of long, and that way they can sit in or reach down into the engine. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get to. So a nice long oil filter is a good thing to have. No, nice long oil funnel is a good thing to have. Okay, so I think I've gone over the basics of what you need and what we're going to accomplish. So let's get to it. Let's start off by opening the hood. So what we're looking for in the engines, we're looking for the oil filler cap, where you pour the oil in. In this case, it's over here on the left side of the engine, and it just unscrews, and it's even marked with the correct type of oil that you need. And that's pretty typical for most cars. So we're removing the oil filler cap in order to, when we're draining the oil, now air can go into the engine and we don't get like any kind of a vacuum lock. Now, I'm not sure how important that really is, because I've forgotten to do this plenty of times. I had no trouble draining the oil out, but it is the correct way to do it. All right, we've put the hood back down, and now we're going to lift the car up. Step one is we need to remove this plastic splash shield. It's held on by a series of screws and a couple of pop like connectors. I don't know how to describe them. I'll show you how to get to them. Screw's not coming out. Now why that's... Ah, there it comes. Whoa, almost dropped it. Well, I did drop it, but I caught it. Now these look a little weird. I'm not sure what happens here. Oh, okay, no, they're just a difference. They're more like a bolt. I didn't mention it. This is the first time I've done an oil change. So it's a bit of a learning curve on how to get this thing apart. Okay, that's like an expanding connector. When you drive the bolt through it, it expands outward and catches into the other part. think we're down to the, well, no. Oh, one screw I missed. Did drop that one. Okay, so then this should, yeah, it just slides away. These little tabs go up under there. Ah, and let's see, I'm not sure we can see it yet. There's the oil filter right there. That's very convenient, easy to get to. Oh my God. It's a dead frog up in there. That's gross. Oh, that was an unpleasant surprise. All right, so I've moved the camera into a slightly different angle to get a better view of this. Okay, like I said, here's our oil filter right here, and conveniently noted, stamped into the engine right here is engine oil with an arrow pointing at this bolt right here. This is our drain plug. This is what we're going to remove in order to drain all the old used oil out of the engine. Now, you won't have this problem so much if you're just working on jack stands and the car is only 1.5 feet or so off the floor. In my case, it's more like 5 feet off the floor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a table underneath here to hold the oil catch pan. All right, so to loosen this up, I've got myself a 17mm end wrench and a dead blow hammer, and I'm just going to take and tap this, and that came loose nice and easily. Now you need to be a little careful because when you first remove this, the oil tends to kind of come gushing out. And in fact, let me go get some latex gloves on so I don't make quite such a mess on my hands. Got that loosened up. I've got hold of the catch pan down here. Just keep loosening this, holding it against it so that I can let it go in one motion. Okay, there we go. And see how it shoots way to the side like that? You gotta be ready for that. And then just move the pan slowly this way as the oil drains out. Now, one reason I do like this catch pan over just a plain old pan or bucket or whatever is that when I pulled it out, I lost the washer that goes on there, and it just fell onto the top of the catch pan rather than disappearing into several inches of oil and being extremely difficult to find, assuming that you even noticed that there used to be one there at all. When it gets down to this point, you want to just keep moving it so that it falls directly in the hole. Otherwise, it starts splashing oil everywhere and makes a complete mess. All right, so draining oil is not real exciting. I'll be back when this is finished. All right, oil is pretty much all drained out. Just gonna slide this back into place. And grab my wrench. Now, if I were being a real pro about this, I would have gotten my torque wrench, checked the torque specs. I'm not worrying about that. You don't want to just really crank the heck out of this, but you do want to make sure it's nice and tight. Okay. Next step is to remove the oil filter itself. Let's rig up. Let's see, make sure I've got this. Okay, I've got it on tight and I want it on loosen. Now, an oil wrench is only for loosening. You never, ever want to use an oil filter wrench to put the oil filter on. There we go. Easy peasy. Now we're going to get some oil, probably leak down out of this. Whoa, it's running down, getting quite a bit, more than I planned on. Yeah, I think next time I do this, I'm going to lower the car down a lot closer to the table so that I'm not dropping this oil so far. Whew, this is slippery. I'll use both hands. And flip the oil filter upside down on the drain pan so it can drain. All right, let that drain a little bit more, clean up our mess, and put the new filter on. Now, one thing I want to make sure to point out on this old oil filter is you see the rubber sealing ring here, this O-ring. When you take the oil filter off, make sure that this ring comes with it, because this ring can come off of here and end up stuck to the engine block. The first time I ever did an oil change on a car when I was 13 years old, that's what happened. And so then when you take the new oil filter, it has its own sealing ring. And now that I had two of them on there, what happened is after about 15, 20 seconds, enough pressure built up to where the oil started spraying out from between the two O-rings, and a horrible mess. You don't want to do that. So make sure that that O-ring comes off with the old filter. Now, get a little bit of the old oil on your finger and just kind of rub it on the ring to make sure it gets a good seal. And just screw the new filter on. Now, like I said before, you do not use the wrench to put this on. It's purely hand tightened. Just you can tighten it by hand. That's good. We're done. Okay, now that we're all finished under here, put all this back together. Just slide these tabs back into this front part. Let's see, this goes in there. Okay, I think I'll start with these little expandy connectors in the back. A little bit tough because you got to kind of squeeze them back together as you put them in. There. Okay. Okay. We're done. Last step, put oil back in the engine. Now you could measure out the oil, but most if not all oils come with a built-in sort of gauge here. The idea is to show you how much is left. You can see, I'm not sure if it's come through in the camera, but you can see the oil level through this little window. And on one side of here, this is quarts and this is liters. So this is a 5-quart. Let's see, let me double check. Yeah, 5 US quarts. So this needs 3.5 quarts. So what we'll do is we'll just keep emptying, putting more oil into the engine until this reaches 1.5 quarts, and we know we're done. We'll also double check that against the oil dipstick. Take our funnel, and sometimes it's a pain, and look at this one's going to be a pain to get in here, because let's see here, what is going on? There's like a filter or not a filter, but like a coarse plastic mesh in the hole here. And so I'm going to have to, let's see, I have to figure something out here. What I really need, and I don't know if such a beast exists, I need a funnel that screws in like the cap. What I'm going to do instead, I'm going to have to hold this myself. While I pour in the oil. Okay, so I'm sure this is extremely exciting. So I'm going to kick it into fast forward mode now. Let it drain. And we are right at about 1.5 quarts left. Okay, so now that we've got all the oil poured in there, we'll give it a few minutes to settle down, get down into the oil pan, and we'll check our oil level by using the dipstick and make sure that we're all good to go.
5 minutes later.
Let's go ahead and check, see how our dipstick looks. We'll pull it out, we'll wipe it off, reinsert it. Take a look, and it looks good. We're at the upper end of the range, so we haven't overfilled. And we are good to go. One last tip, very important. Don't forget to put the oil cap back on. What I like to do is to take this and I put it right on top of the car keys. That way I can't accidentally forget to put this on, because it'll make kind of a mess if you don't put it back. We've got everything all buttoned up, pretty much ready to go. The last thing we need to do is that we have to reset the maintenance minder system. And that's just the thing that monitors your oil quality. Well, actually what it does is it measures your mileage and how you're driving, and it guesstimates how much oil left, or how much oil life you have left. Press the engine start button twice to wake up the car, and then turn on the dashboard. Now find this control on your steering wheel. The actual buttons are on the back here. The center button is your selector. The up arrow and down arrow move through the menu system. All right. Okay, now using those select reset controls, use the up and down arrows to move through the menu, and you're looking for this one, vehicle settings. Use the arrows again to move through the menu selections until you find maintenance info. Hit the middle button to select that. Now, this is what you're looking for, the maintenance reset. In this case, it's saying B1. I've already reset the maintenance A1, which is the oil change. And so this one is showing up instead. What you want to do is make sure that it's on maintenance A1 or A. I don't remember exactly what it said. And then you use the up and down arrows to select reset, and you'd hit the middle button to reset that tracker. Now, I'm not going to do that in this case because I don't want to reset the B1. I would want to reset the A1. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Oil's all changed. She's all set to go. Please, as always, go down there, find that like button, give us a thumbs up on this video. Go subscribe to the channel. There's a subscribe button down there somewhere below, and also somewhere around here, there's another button that you can click on to subscribe to the channel. If you do that and you turn on notifications, YouTube will let you know every time that I upload new content from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.